Right now, buying tips for recreational property.
Well, now that the days of summer are almost here, many of us are thinking about those lazy days at the summer cottage. That is, if I had a summer cottage. Our expert helps you find the best recreational property for your buck. Affordability has been a really big issue, obviously, for the Lower Mainland, BC in general. Is there still affordability when it comes to recreational property?
Yes, it's what I call the golden circle. So the prime properties are a 4-hour drive. You can pack up the family into the car on a Friday night, get to your property within 4 hours, be there for the weekend, and come back on Sunday night. That's a 4-hour corridor. But if we look at like Nicoll Lake, which is the closest lake really going up to Coquihalla without going to Vancouver Island and the ferry problem, as you go to Nicoll Lake, $800,000, $900,000 for 1 acre. If you now could get 2 weeks off and you drive up into the 6-hour, 8-hour corridor, say up into the Prince George area, there you got a lot on the lake, same lot, 1 acre, maybe for about $110,000.
But more a time commitment.
It's time commitment. It's a little colder in the wintertime up there, you know, but it's a different price range.
What about locations? What are we seeing as far as maybe places that people haven't thought of as being an affordable option, but also, hey, I didn't think of that. Oh, it ends up being just great.
I'd say little towns like Vanderhoof. Well, of course, I have a ranch there, so I favor Vanderhoof, you know. But it's neat. I still go downtown. There's 4,000 people. I come from the ranch, and I go and buy the groceries. I leave my keys in the car. I don't worry about nothing. You know, those little towns are still there. The Albertans have come in and gone into the Kootenays. I mean, you know, Kootenays, single-family house, $800,000 and plus. So the Kootenays are pretty well taken up by the Alberta traffic. Kelowna, very expensive. Again, Toronto, you know, people from Alberta have gone in there.
Is there a time of year that's better than the other to buy recreational property?
Yeah, we figured that out back in about 86, 87, when my sons were really involved, and what they did, I mean, one of my boys is really involved now too, but we worked out that the best time to buy a piece of property was January and February.
Why?
The best, well, because it's cold, it's just after Christmas, people are stretched for money, it's 40 below zero up there, there's snow, and how do you tell what's underneath the snow, right? Unless you did like us, we have maps, we have air photos, so we knew it was underneath the snow.
Right.
So we usually bought January, February, March through there, and the best time to sell is probably starting July, August, September.
When people want to use the property.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the best time to sell your properties.
Are we seeing more and more people buying down south? I mean, you brought that up. With the crisis that's happening in the States, there seems to be a bit more affordability for those of us in Canada that would have the money to potentially buy in the States. Is that a good option?
I've looked at it. I've gone to Birch Bay and I've looked at the United States. But unless you have a Nexus card going through the border fast, that 2.5 hours, like the ferries lining up, I'm not into that myself personally. And I think a lot of people aren't. I'd like to get on the Coquihalla, double lane, and just up the Kamloops and look for a nice recreational property up there.
Up ahead, more buying tips for recreational property. And in a few minutes, making sense of home warranties. Do you have a question for one of our experts? If so, just email it to realtytelevision@citytv.com. Coming up, more buying tips for recreational property. And in a few minutes, making sense of home warranties.
Thinking of buying a second home? Maybe some recreational property? Well, our next expert has been buying and selling recreational property for over 20 years and has some more advice for you. How do you know if you got a good deal?
It's tough to appraise recreational properties, very tough. I know, I've always had a gut feeling. I mean, I got all the computers behind me and all the staff, but still, it still comes down to my desk, deals on my desk, and my gut tells me this is a good deal, you know? But you have to look at several factors. Once I look at an air photo, I can pretty well tell what it's all about. Plane shoots them anywhere from 10,000 up to 30,000 feet. I put it on a stereoscope. I can look at that piece of property, and I can tell you the height of the tree, the diameter of the tree, how big the cabin is, where the cabin is, how many acres are cleared, where the swamp is. I can tell all that. So I have a really good feel for it. Then I know if it's a good deal or not.
And so I guess the opposite would be true. If it's a bad deal, do you get that inkling that, or is it just if you're not even quite sure, you say, I'm washing my hands of this?
Well, I've gone against some of our own employees. I remember buying a subdivision of 82 lots. They wanted, I think, $1.5 million for in the middle of a Savannah. No water. And the whole thing, the reason the guy had gone broke is because he didn't have water. I just thought there was water there because I've been sitting on this hill studying the rock formations. Right. And so I started drilling. I had brought a well driller in, and we started drilling. Now, you can lose the whole $1.5 million if you didn't hit water, or if you hit water, you could make good profit, right? So for every 10 feet he went down, I had a beer. I had a case of beer there. I didn't want to get a
How drunk were you? That's what I want to know.
I was through one case of beer, and at 700 feet, we finally hit water.
Right.
So you take a gamble sometimes like that. So we did hit water finally, and then we put wells in for all those lots. I think they're now 3 times what we sold them for.
Right. But that is a good point for anyone that is looking for recreational property, even just on a small scale. Those are some of the things they want to make sure they have. They have water.
Septic, make sure it's gravel soil so you have your runoff. If you don't have power, you look at solar power, you look at a whole bunch of different things. So, but there's so many different ways to do things now. I mean, it's a pretty modern world, even your chemical toilets now. So you just have to look at the terrain, you have to look at the land, what the land can handle without damaging it, without damaging the environment.
Some of the pitfalls to owning recreational property?
There's pitfalls. It's like you say, it's you got to make sure you sleep at night. That to me is the most important thing.
So you got to be able to afford it too.
You got to be able to afford it. Don't buy a piece of property and then worry about payments. That's one of the most important thing when you're an investor. There's no real other pitfalls. The only thing is the environment. Make sure that there's no pollution on the property, that somebody didn't have a cabin there, and that they dumped some oil there, or somebody didn't log it. And that's one of the things to watch for. Back in the old days, when you logged a piece of property and you had to change the oil in your machine, you just dug a hole, opened up the drain, oil goes in, you cover it over. So make sure you got no oil, you got no environmental problems there, because that costs money to fix.